Do you have anything expired? Those 5 words changed the life of the most feared man in New York. The bakery smelled like cinnamon, sugar, and warm bread cooling behind glass shelves, but all I could smell was rain-soaked fabric and the cheap coffee I'd spilled on my apron 3 hours earlier during my shift at Mercy Diner. My sneakers squeaked against the wet tile floor as I stepped inside the little corner bakery on 48th Street, clutching 7 crumpled dollar bills so tightly in my hand that the edges had started to tear. Outside, Manhattan drowned beneath freezing November rain. Yellow taxi lights blurred across puddles. Steam curled from sewer grates into the dark like ghosts escaping the city. It was almost 10 p.m. Closing time. I almost turned around before speaking. God, I almost did. Because dignity is a strange thing when you're broke. You want to keep it even when life keeps taking pieces of it away. The teenage girl behind the counter barely looked at me. She was wiping down trays, bored, exhausted, ready to go home. I swallowed hard and glanced at the birthday cakes lined inside the display case. White frosting. Pink roses. Cartoon princesses. Chocolate curls. Lily would have loved any of them. My daughter had spent the last 2 weeks talking about turning 6 like it was the greatest achievement in human history. 6 is big, Mommy, she'd whispered last night while wrapped in blankets beside the radiator that barely worked. Because 6-year-olds are brave. I smiled then. I almost cried now. Excuse me, I said softly. My voice cracked from the cold. Do you have any cakes you can't sell anymore? The girl frowned. What? Heat crawled into my cheeks. I hated this part. Hated the humiliation burning through my chest. Like, expired ones. Damaged maybe. Anything you were throwing away. Her expression changed instantly. Pity mixed with annoyance. Ma'am, we don't give out free food. I'm not asking for free food. My fingers tightened around the damp bills in my hand. I can pay a little. It's for my daughter's birthday tomorrow. Somewhere behind me, a car door shut. Heavy. Expensive. The sound echoed through the rain outside, but I didn't. Turn around. The girl sighed dramatically and disappeared into the back kitchen. I stared at the cakes while trying not to cry in public like some pathetic woman in a sad commercial. My reflection in the bakery window looked exhausted. Pale skin. Wet hair sticking to my cheeks. Dark circles beneath my eyes that no concealer could hide anymore. 28 years old and I looked worn thin by life. There's a grocery store 3 blocks down, a male voice said quietly behind me. You can buy cake there for less. The voice was deep. Controlled. Dangerous in a way I couldn't explain. I turned slowly. And for one terrible second, I forgot how to breathe. He stood near the entrance wearing a black wool coat still speckled with rain, one hand in his pocket, the other holding leather gloves. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark hair brushed neatly away from a face too sharp to be gentle. Ice blue eyes locked onto mine with terrifying focus. 2 men in dark suits waited outside beside a black Rolls-Royce parked against the curb. Even from 20 feet away, I could feel power radiating off him like heat from an open fire. He looked expensive. Untouchable. The kind of man newspapers photographed walking into courtrooms beside lawyers worth more than apartment buildings. The grocery store cakes are frozen, I said before I could stop myself. His eyebrow lifted slightly. And? My throat tightened. My daughter had heart surgery last year. Saying it out loud still hurt. She thinks bakery cake means everything's okay now. Silence stretched between us. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Somewhere in the back, metal trays clattered. The man stared at me so intensely it made my skin warm despite the cold. Not judging. Not pitying. Observing. Like he was trying to understand something that didn't belong in his world. Then the girl returned holding a tiny box. "We had one with messed up frosting," she said awkwardly. "Manager said you can take it." I looked down at the box like it contained gold. "How much?" "It's fine." I shook my head immediately. "No. Please. I don't want charity." The blue-eyed stranger watched me carefully as I counted my wrinkled bills onto the counter one by one with trembling fingers. $5.72. Every dollar I had left until Friday. The girl hesitated before taking it. I picked up the tiny cake box gently, terrified of dropping it. Vanilla frosting. Crooked lettering. One corner smashed slightly inward. To me, it looked perfect. "Thank you," I whispered. When I turned toward the door again, the stranger was still watching me. And somehow, that felt far more dangerous than if he'd threatened me at all. The cake box warmed my hands during the subway ride home even though the frosting inside was probably cold by now. I held it carefully against my chest every time the train jerked beneath the tracks, terrified the damaged corner would collapse completely before Lily got to see it. Around me, exhausted strangers stared at phones or slept against dirty windows while Manhattan blurred past in streaks of wet neon light. Nobody noticed me smiling for the first time all week. Nobody noticed the tears sitting quietly in my eyes either. By the time I climbed the 4 flights of stairs to our apartment building in Queens, my legs felt like they might give out beneath me. The hallway smelled like boiled cabbage and cigarette smoke. Somewhere down the corridor, a couple argued through thin walls while an old television blasted game show applause. Home. I unlocked apartment 4B as quietly as possible, but the second the door creaked open, I heard small footsteps racing across the floor. "Mommy?" Lily appeared wrapped in my oversized gray hoodie, her blonde curls messy from sleep, paper crayons clutched tightly in one tiny hand. "You are late." God, she looked so small. Too small for 6 years old. The scar near her collarbone disappeared beneath the hoodie fabric, but I still saw it every time I looked at her. Proof that children should not have to survive things like open-heart surgery before learning multiplication tables. I crouched immediately and opened my arms. "I know, baby. I am sorry." She launched herself into me hard enough to almost knock me backward, giggling against my shoulder. "Did you bring it?" I laughed softly despite the ache in my chest. "You already know." I had a feeling. She whispered it dramatically like she was sharing state secrets. I pulled back slowly and lifted the white bakery box between us. Lily gasped so loudly the neighbor's dog started barking through the wall. "Mommy." Her little fingers covered her mouth. "Is that real?" That question nearly destroyed me. Not because she asked it. Because she asked it like real birthday cakes belonged to other children. Better children. "It is very real," I whispered. Lily squealed and bounced on her toes while I carried the box to our tiny kitchen table beside the radiator. The apartment looked exactly how it always did when I finally slowed down enough to notice it. Peeling paint. Water stains near the ceiling. A stack of overdue medical bills shoved beneath the fruit bowls so Lily would not see them. The refrigerator hummed loudly but held almost nothing except milk, eggs, and half a pack of turkey slices. Still, tonight the apartment felt warmer somehow. Lily climbed onto the chair beside the table and watched me open the cake box with complete awe on her face. The frosting really was crooked. One side looked slightly smashed. The pink icing letters read "Happy Birthday Lily," but the Y had slid downward awkwardly like it was melting off the cake. To my daughter, it looked like magic. "It is beautiful," she whispered. Then she frowned suddenly. "Wait. Mommy." Her green eyes narrowed suspiciously. "How much money did this cost?" I blinked. "What? You said we had to be careful this month." 6-year-olds should not understand financial anxiety. They should understand cartoons and playgrounds and what flavor popsicles they liked best. Not electricity bills. Not stress. I forced a smile onto my face. Do not worry about grown-up things tonight. Lily studied me for a second longer before nodding slowly. Okay. Then she grinned. Can we light candles anyway, even if it is not tomorrow yet? I think we can break the rules once. She clapped excitedly while I searched the kitchen drawer for leftover birthday candles from last year. My hands froze suddenly when headlights swept briefly across our apartment window from the street below. A black car idled beside the curb outside. Expensive. Long out of place in this neighborhood. I stepped closer to the window carefully, pulling the curtain aside just enough to peek through. A black Rolls-Royce sat beneath the broken streetlight across from our building. Rain glistened across the hood like liquid silver. And inside the back seat, barely visible through the tinted glass, sat the man from the bakery watching our apartment like he already knew exactly which window belonged to me. I should have closed the curtain immediately. Any sane woman would have. But something about the way he sat there made it impossible to look away. The city moved around him in streaks of rain and blurred headlights while he remained completely still inside the back seat of that black Rolls-Royce like Manhattan itself revolved around his silence. Even from 4 floors above the street, I could feel him watching. Not casually. Intentionally. My pulse started climbing so fast it hurt. Mommy? Lily's voice snapped me back. I let the curtain fall shut immediately and forced my hands to stop trembling before turning around. Yeah, baby. She sat cross-legged on the kitchen chair with frosting already smeared on the tip of her nose from sneaking a finger into the cake while I was distracted. Can I have the purple candle instead of the pink one? I stared at her for a second too long before smiling weakly. Of course. Children save you in strange ways without even realizing it. 1 second your mind is spiraling into fear and exhaustion and overdue bills. The next second a little girl asks about birthday candles like the world is still soft and safe. I lit all 6 candles carefully while Lily bounced excitedly in her seat, the tiny apartment glowing warm beneath the flickering light. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows. Inside, my daughter looked happier than I had seen her in months. Make a wish, I whispered. Lily squeezed her eyes shut immediately. Serious. Dramatic. Completely committed to the moment. Then she blew the candles out so hard one of them tipped sideways into the frosting. I laughed before I could stop myself. A real laugh. The kind I had not heard from my own mouth in a long time. Lily grinned. Proudly. Did you wish too? I do not think moms get birthday wishes on someone else's cake. That is dumb, she declared confidently. Everybody should get wishes. God. Children really do not understand how cruel the world can be yet. Maybe that is why adults keep fighting to protect their innocence even when life has already stolen most of our own. We ate tiny slices of vanilla cake sitting side by side beneath the humming kitchen light while Lily told me all the important things 6-year-olds apparently discuss at school. Which teacher smelled the nicest? Which kid cried during math? Why pigeons looked suspicious? I nodded along, smiling softly, pretending tomorrow's rent notice was not sitting unopened beside the microwave. Pretending my chest did not tighten every time Lily coughed too hard after laughing. Pretending I had not seen a dangerous stranger watching our apartment from the street below. After cake, Lily disappeared into the bedroom and returned wearing the crooked paper crown she made in art class. Purple marker stars covered the edges unevenly. One side was taped together because it had ripped earlier that week. Do I look royal? She asked dramatically, placing both hands on her hips. You look expensive, I replied. She gasped happily. That is better. 20 minutes later, she fell asleep curled beside me on the couch with the paper crown still tilted sideways on her head. Cartoons played quietly on the old television while rain continued falling beyond the windows. I brushed soft curls away from her forehead carefully, trying not to wake her. Then someone knocked on the apartment door. 3 slow knocks. Controlled. Deliberate. My entire body froze instantly. Nobody visited this late. Nobody good anyway. My stomach twisted hard as I carefully lifted Lily's head onto the couch pillow and stood slowly. Another knock echoed through the apartment. Calm. Patient. Somehow worse than shouting would have been. I moved quietly toward the door and looked through the peephole. And my blood went cold. The man from the bakery stood outside apartment 4B wearing the same black coat, rainwater still glistening across his broad shoulders beneath the flickering hallway light. One hand rested casually in his pocket while the other held a white bakery box tied neatly with dark purple ribbon. He looked directly toward the peephole like he already knew I was there. Then his deep voice carried softly through the door. Your daughter forgot the candles. Every survival instinct I had screamed at me not to open that door. Men like him did not stand outside apartments in Queens at almost midnight carrying bakery boxes unless they wanted something. And men with eyes that cold definitely did not follow exhausted waitresses home because they forgot birthday candles. I kept one hand on the chain lock while opening the door barely 2 inches. How did you know where I live? My voice came out sharper than I intended. Good. Fear should sound sharp. Fear keeps women alive. He stood motionless beneath the flickering hallway light, rainwater still clinging to the dark strands of his hair. Up close, he looked even more dangerous somehow. Not loud dangerous. Worse. Controlled dangerous. The kind that never needed to raise his voice because everyone else already knew better. You dropped your address label outside the bakery, he said calmly. It was attached to your diner apron. I stared at him suspiciously. That sounded possible. Which irritated me more because it meant he had prepared an answer before knocking. His gaze shifted briefly downward toward the loose chain lock. You are right to be cautious. Most women would not compliment themselves for frightening people. One corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. Most women are not honest about being afraid. Silence stretched between us. Somewhere downstairs, an old elevator groaned loudly through the building walls. I tightened my grip on the door. Thank you for the candles. You can leave them there. Instead of arguing, he held the white bakery box out slowly. There is more inside. I hesitated before finally unlatching the chain. Just enough to take the box quickly from his hands. It felt heavier than candles should. Warm too. Confused, I opened the lid slightly. My breath caught instantly. Inside sat a second cake. Not damaged. Not expired. Perfect. White vanilla frosting decorated with tiny purple flowers around the edges and neat lettering across the center. Happy birthday, Lily. My throat tightened painfully. I did not order this. I know. Then I cannot accept it. His expression did not change. Why? Because people do not spend money on strangers for no reason. For the first time since opening the door, something shifted in those icy blue eyes. Not anger. Something quieter. Tired maybe. No, he said softly. Most people do not. The hallway suddenly felt too small around us. Too warm. Too quiet. I hated how aware I was of him standing there in that black coat smelling faintly of rain and expensive cologne while my old apartment building buzzed weakly around us. He belonged in penthouses and black cars and places with security guards. Not here beside peeling paint and broken hallway lights. Look, I whispered carefully, I appreciate the gesture. I do. But Lily already has cake. She is happy. We are fine. His eyes moved past me briefly toward the couch where Lily still slept beneath the old blanket, paper crown crooked on her head. Something unreadable crossed his face so quickly I almost missed it entirely. Children should not have to settle for almost. God. That sentence landed somewhere deep inside my chest and stayed there. Because he said it like someone who understood exactly what almost felt like. Almost enough money. Almost safe. Almost healed. Almost okay. I swallowed hard and closed the cake box slowly. You still have not told me your name. Damien. The name fit him too perfectly. Sharp. Elegant. Dangerous around the edges. Claire, I answered quietly. I know. Of course he did. Men like him always knew things they should not. I should have shut the door then. Thanked him politely and ended whatever strange moment this was before it became something worse. Instead, I heard myself asking the dumbest possible question. Why are you doing this? Damien looked at me for a long second without answering. Rain tapped softly against the hallway window behind him while somewhere far below us, the city kept moving without noticing either one of us standing there. Then his deep voice finally broke the silence. Because tonight your daughter smiled at a damaged cake like it was the greatest thing she had ever seen. His jaw tightened slightly. And I realized I have spent my entire life surrounded by people who never smile at anything. I did not sleep much after Damien left. Even after the black Rolls-Royce disappeared from the curb below our building, something about him stayed behind like the lingering scent of expensive cologne in the hallway outside apartment 4B. Maybe it was the way he looked at Lily sleeping on the couch. Maybe it was the sadness buried beneath all that terrifying control. Or maybe it was simply because men like Damien Moretti did not accidentally walk into women's lives. They entered them deliberately. Carefully. Like storms crossing oceans. By 6 in the morning, I was already awake making instant coffee in our tiny kitchen while rain still slid down the windows in thin silver lines. Lily shuffled sleepily into the room dragging her blanket behind her like a cape, paper crown still tilted sideways on messy blonde curls. Mommy, she whispered dramatically, I think rich people cake tastes different. I laughed quietly into my coffee mug. Oh really? Definitely. She climbed into her chair and rested her chin on the table. It tastes expensive. God. Children noticed everything. How would you know what expensive tastes like? Lily thought about it seriously. Like butter and happiness. I covered my mouth quickly to hide my smile. Then her eyes landed on the second bakery box still sitting unopened near the microwave. Wait. Her entire face lit up. Another cake. It was a mistake, I answered too quickly. Lily narrowed her eyes suspiciously in a way that reminded me painfully of adults who no longer trusted the world. Mommy. What? You only use that voice when bills come in the mail. I sighed softly and sat beside her. A man from the bakery brought it last night. The handsome one. I nearly choked on my coffee. What? The handsome one with the sad eyes. I stared at my 6-year-old daughter in complete disbelief. You saw him? Through the window. She shrugged casually. He looked lonely. Sometimes. Children were terrifyingly perceptive. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed loudly against the counter. Unknown number. My stomach tightened immediately. Almost nobody called me this early unless something was wrong. I answered carefully. Hello. Miss Bennett, a woman asked politely. This is Queen's Medical Billing. My chest dropped instantly. Of course. The payment extension. They were finally coming for it. I know I am behind, I started quickly. I can make another payment Friday after work if you just give me until, actually, the woman interrupted gently, your balance was paid in full this morning. Silence. Complete silence. My fingers tightened slowly around the phone. What? The remaining amount for Lily Bennett's cardiac treatment has been cleared entirely. My pulse started hammering hard enough to hurt. There has to be some mistake. No mistake, ma'am. Anonymous payment. Everything has been covered. Anonymous. My eyes drifted slowly toward the untouched bakery box sitting on the counter. Ice spread carefully through my chest. Who paid it? I am sorry. The donor requested privacy. Of course he did. Men like Damien probably moved through life solving problems with signatures and wire transfers the same way normal people bought groceries. The call ended a minute later, but I stayed frozen beside the kitchen counter staring at nothing while Lily watched me carefully from her chair. Mommy? Her small voice sounded nervous now. What happened? I looked at my daughter. At the scar near her collarbone. At the little paper crown still sliding sideways over sleepy green eyes. And suddenly I felt something dangerous rise inside me. Not relief. Relief would have been easier. This felt more complicated. Because people did not erase $30,000 of medical debt out of kindness. Not in New York. Not anywhere. There was always a reason. Always a price eventually hiding behind generosity. My phone buzzed again before I could calm my breathing. Another unknown number. One message this time. No greeting. No explanation. Just 8 simple words across the screen. Children should heal without their mothers drowning beside them. Beneath the message sat a single black chess king emoji. Damien. For the next 3 days, Damien Moretti kept appearing in my life without actually appearing at all. It started with groceries. I came home after a double shift at Mercy Diner with swollen feet and coffee stains on my apron to find 2 brown paper bags sitting outside apartment 4B. Fresh fruit. Organic milk. Bread that still smelled warm. Real chicken instead of the frozen processed kind I usually bought when things were desperate. There was no note. No receipt. Nothing except a tiny black chess king sticker placed neatly on one of the bags. Lily noticed it immediately. Your scary boyfriend brought groceries again. I nearly dropped the milk carton. He is not my boyfriend. Then why does he buy us strawberries? Honestly, that was an excellent question. By Friday morning, things became even stranger. I walked into Mercy Diner expecting another exhausting 10-hour shift beneath flickering lights and screaming espresso machines only to find my manager standing near the counter looking unusually nervous. Carl never looked nervous. He usually looked irritated and over-caffeinated. Claire, he said quickly the second I walked in. You are off section 3 tonight. My stomach dropped instantly. What? Why? VIP reservation. He adjusted his tie anxiously. Private client rented the entire east side of the diner from 6 to 9. At Mercy Diner? Apparently. Manhattan was full of billionaires with weird habits, but nobody rented half a greasy diner in Queens unless they were hiding from paparazzi or planning a murder. Who is it? Carl lowered his voice. Some Moretti guy. Of course. Of course it was Damien. Heat crawled slowly up my neck while I tied my apron tighter around my waist. I am not serving him. You absolutely are. Carl looked horrified. Claire, do you understand how much money this reservation cost? The man paid enough to replace our broken freezer and tipped the kitchen before he even arrived. I closed my eyes briefly. Somewhere in Manhattan, Damien Moretti was probably destroying my peace of mind while calmly drinking expensive whiskey like this entire situation was perfectly normal. By 6:15 that evening, 3 black SUVs lined the curb outside Mercy Diner like something out of a political thriller. Men in dark suits stepped inside first, quietly scanning exits and corners before Damien finally entered behind them. Every conversation in the diner seemed to lower automatically. Even the air changed around him somehow. He wore a charcoal gray suit tonight instead of black, tailored perfectly against broad shoulders that looked completely ridiculous inside our tiny diner booths. His icy blue eyes found mine immediately across the room. Not searching. Expecting. Like he already knew exactly where I would be standing. Claire. Just hearing my name and his voice irritated me. Deep. Calm. Too smooth for a man who casually paid off hospital debt before breakfast. I walked toward his booth carefully with my order pad clutched too tightly in my hand. You rented half my workplace. Damien looked mildly confused. Would you have answered if I called? Unfortunately, no. That is not the point. One corner of his mouth lifted slightly. It usually is. God, he was impossible. I set a water glass down harder than necessary in front of him. You cannot keep inserting yourself into my life. I already did. The simple confidence in that answer made my pulse jump annoyingly fast. Around us, his security team sat scattered quietly through the diner pretending not to watch every movement near our booth. Damien ignored them completely. His attention stayed fixed on me like the rest of the room barely existed. Lily liked the strawberries, he said softly. I blinked. How do you know that? Because children smile differently when they are surprised. There it was again. That strange sadness beneath all his control. Like every kind thing in the world confused him slightly. I should have stayed angry. Really. Instead, exhaustion slipped out before I could stop it. Why are you doing all this? Damien studied me silently for a long moment while rain streaked softly down the diner windows behind him. Then his deep voice lowered almost to a whisper. Because nobody helped my mother when I was 6. Something inside my chest cracked quietly at the edges. After that night at the diner, Damien stopped pretending his presence in my life was temporary. He did not say it directly. Men like him probably never needed to. They moved through the world with the quiet certainty of people accustomed to being obeyed. And somehow, terrifyingly, parts of my life had already started bending around him without my permission. 3 days later, I found Lily sitting cross-legged on our apartment floor coloring inside a brand new art book that definitely had not been there that morning. Where did this come from? I asked carefully. Lily looked up innocently. The tall man brought it. My entire body went still. What tall man? The one with the sad eyes. Of course. Of course she described Damien that way every single time. When? After school. My pulse jumped hard enough to make my stomach hurt. Lily. I crouched immediately beside her. You do not open doors for strangers. I did not. She pointed proudly toward the hallway. Mrs. Ramirez downstairs let him in because he carried groceries again. I closed my eyes briefly. Somewhere in Queens, elderly women were apparently helping Mafia bosses deliver organic produce into my apartment building. Fantastic. What exactly did he say to you? Lily shrugged casually while coloring a purple dragon. He asked if I liked dinosaurs. And? I said yes. That is it. Then he gave me cookies shaped like turtles. God help me. Damien Moretti was bribing my child with reptile pastries. That evening, I barely made it through my shift at Mercy Diner because my brain refused to calm down. Every time the front door opened, my heart jumped stupidly expecting Damien to walk in wearing another expensive suit and that unreadable expression that always made me feel like he saw more than he should. Instead, around 8:30, someone else walked in. And suddenly the entire night changed. Travis Cole looked exactly like regret usually did. Unshaven. Tired. Cheap leather jacket damp from rain. The second I saw him crossing the diner floor toward my section, every muscle in my body tightened automatically. Some fears lived inside your bones long after love died. Claire. His voice carried that familiar roughness I used to mistake for charm years ago. I set down the coffee pot slowly. What are you doing here? Travis shoved both hands into his jacket pockets awkwardly. I have been trying to call. I changed my number. Yeah. I noticed. I glanced quickly toward the kitchen, already calculating exits in my head like an idiot. Not because Travis scared me exactly. Not anymore. But because exhaustion had taught me that men became unpredictable when life stopped going their way. You cannot just disappear with Lily, he muttered quietly. Anger flickered instantly through my chest. Disappear? I whispered sharply. You vanished for 8 months. I had things going on. You always had things going on. His jaw tightened. I made mistakes. You gambled away rent money. I said I know. Several customers glanced nervously toward us before looking away again. Shame burned hot beneath my skin immediately. I hated public scenes. Hated feeling exposed. Travis stepped closer, lowering his voice. Look, I just need somewhere to stay for a few days until I figure things out. There it was. Not Lily. Not me. Need. Always need. No, Claire. No, my voice came out stronger this time. You do not get to walk back into our lives because you ran out of options somewhere else. His expression darkened slightly. So that is it. That is it. Silence stretched between us while rain battered softly against the diner windows. Then Travis leaned closer enough for me to smell stale beer beneath his cologne. You think you are too good for me now? My stomach twisted hard. Because once upon a time, that sentence would have ended with apologies from me instead of anger. Before I could answer, another voice cut cleanly through the tension behind him. Calm. Cold. Controlled. She was too good for you long before now. Every nerve in my body fired at once. Travis turned slowly. And standing near the diner entrance beneath dripping rainwater and fluorescent lights was Damian Moretti in a black overcoat, ice blue eyes fixed directly on the man standing too close to me. The entire diner went silent so fast it felt unreal. Even the kitchen noise faded into the background. Beneath the weight of Damian Moretti standing near the entrance like he owned every inch of air inside the room. Maybe he did. Travis straightened slowly, trying to look tougher than he actually was, but beside Damian he looked painfully ordinary. Smaller somehow. Less certain. Damian walked toward us with calm, measured steps, rainwater still darkening the shoulders of his black overcoat. 2 men in suits entered quietly behind him and remained near the front windows without speaking. Customers suddenly became very interested in their coffee cups. Who the hell are you? Travis asked. Damian ignored the question completely. His icy blue eyes settled on me first. Are you alright, Claire? God. That was the terrifying thing about him. The control. He sounded calm enough to discuss weather while tension wrapped around the diner tight as piano wire. I nodded once automatically before I could stop myself. Travis noticed immediately. You know this guy? That depends, Damian answered before I could speak. Are we using legal definitions or emotional ones? I nearly choked on air. Travis looked confused for half a second before irritation replaced it. Listen, man, this is none of your business. Damian finally looked at him directly then. Cold. Quiet. Precise. You raised your voice at her in public. Travis scoffed. She is the mother of my kid. And? Damian's voice stayed perfectly level. That title does not grant ownership. My pulse started climbing embarrassingly fast. Not because I was scared. Because nobody had ever spoken for me like that before. Not once. Travis laughed bitterly and stepped closer. What, are you her new boyfriend now? Damian tilted his head slightly like he was considering the question seriously. No, relief flickered briefly across Travis's face. Then Damian spoke again. But I am the man standing here while you make her uncomfortable. Oh God. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees instantly. Travis looked at me sharply. Claire, seriously? You are bringing rich psychopaths around Lily now? Anger shot through me so fast it surprised even me. Do not talk about my daughter. Travis threw his hands upward. Dramatically. I am trying to help you. You came here asking for money and a couch. Because I fell on hard times. I stared at him in disbelief. You disappeared for 8 months. I had debts. Damien's expression changed slightly at that word. Not visibly enough for most people to notice. I noticed. Travis kept talking anyway. You think single motherhood is hard? Try owing dangerous people money. Silence. Complete silence. Somewhere behind the counter, Carl quietly dropped a fork. Damien looked almost amused suddenly. Which felt far more frightening than anger would have. Dangerous people? Damien repeated softly. Travis nodded quickly, not realizing the mistake he was making. Yeah. Guys from Brooklyn. Loan sharks or something. They have been threatening me for weeks. One of Damien's security men near the window coughed into his fist hard enough to hide what sounded suspiciously like laughter. My stomach twisted immediately. Oh no. Oh no no no. Travis finally noticed the reaction too late. What? Damien slid one hand casually into his coat pocket while studying Travis with unreadable calm. Describe them. Why? Humor me. Travis hesitated before mumbling nervously, Italian guys mostly. Expensive suits. Black cars. Another silence fell across the diner. Then Damien looked at me slowly. Claire. Yes. Would it upset you if Mr. Cole stopped visiting permanently? Travis blinked rapidly. What the hell does that mean? It means, Damien said calmly, that your financial problems are no longer your most urgent concern. Are you threatening me? Damien considered that carefully. No, he glanced toward the diner windows where rain still poured steadily across Queens like silver static. I am correcting your priorities. Travis went pale so quickly it almost looked painful. For the first time since walking into the diner, genuine fear crossed his face. Real fear. Not performative anger. Not wounded pride. Fear. And suddenly I understood something terrifying about Damien Moretti. He never needed to raise his voice because people like Travis eventually realized exactly who he was all on their own. Travis left the diner 5 minutes later looking like someone had suddenly remembered every bad decision he had ever made. He did not shout. Did not argue. He barely even looked at me on the way out. Fear had drained all the noise out of him. The bell above the diner door jingled softly as he disappeared into the rain, and somehow the entire room breathed again afterward. Conversation slowly returned. Dishes clattered in the kitchen. Carl pretended very hard not to stare at Damien like he had just witnessed organized crime over pancakes. I stood frozen beside booth 7 with my pulse still racing while Damien calmly sipped black coffee like nothing unusual had happened at all. You scared him. Damien lifted one shoulder slightly. He arrived frightened. You knew those men he owes money to. Yes. That should concern me more than it currently does. For the first time all night, a real smile touched the corner of his mouth. Small. Brief. Dangerous. Probably. God help me, I almost smiled back. Almost. Instead, I crossed my arms tightly. You cannot threaten people for me. Damien's expression turned serious again immediately. Claire. His deep voice lowered slightly. I did not threaten him. Then what exactly was that? He looked toward the rain-covered diner windows thoughtfully before answering. A reminder that some women stop surviving the moment the wrong man feels entitled to them. The word settled heavily between us. Because he was not entirely talking about Travis anymore. He was talking about every woman who learned to shrink themselves just to keep peace around unstable men. Every woman who apologized too quickly. Smiled too carefully. Stayed too long. I looked away first. You should not understand that. Damien rested one hand against the warm coffee mug quietly. My mother understood it very well. Silence wrapped around us again. Softer this time. Less sharp. One of the waitresses passed nearby pretending not to eavesdrop while absolutely eavesdropping. Somewhere in the kitchen, somebody dropped another fork. What happened to her? I asked carefully. Damien stared down into his coffee for so long I thought he might not answer. Then finally, quietly, she spent her entire life loving men who only noticed her suffering after it became impossible to ignore. Something painful moved through my chest. And you hated them for it. I hated myself for becoming one of them. His eyes lifted slowly back to mine then. Cold blue softened by something far more dangerous than intimidation. Honesty. Until the night you asked for expired cake like it was too much to want one good thing for your daughter. My throat tightened instantly. No man had ever looked at my exhaustion like it meant something before. Most people just looked away from struggling women. Damien studied them instead. Like every bruise life left behind personally offended him. Outside, rain finally began slowing against the windows. The city blurred softer now beneath midnight lights and wet streets. I should have been afraid of him. Honestly, part of me still was. Men with that much power usually came with destruction attached. But sitting across from Damien Moretti inside a tiny diner in Queens, I realized something terrifying. The most dangerous thing about him was not his money. Not the black cars or silent bodyguards or the way grown men visibly panicked around him. It was the way he noticed suffering without looking away. Claire. I blinked softly. What? Damien reached into the inside pocket of his coat and placed something carefully on the table between us. A small folded piece of paper. Confused, I opened it slowly. Inside was a child's drawing done in purple crayon. A crooked dragon beside a stick figure wearing a paper crown. At the bottom, messy handwriting read, "Thank you for the strawberries." My eyes widened immediately. Lily gave you this? Damien nodded once. Yesterday. God. Of course she had. She likes you, I whispered before I could stop myself. Something unreadable crossed his face then. Not pride. Not amusement. Almost grief. That, he said quietly, might be the most terrifying thing anyone has ever done to me. And for the first time since Damien Moretti walked into my life, I saw it clearly beneath the tailored suits and terrifying calm. The loneliness. The kind that money could not touch. The kind that made powerful men sit alone in diners long after midnight because a little girl smiled at damaged cake like it was treasure.